All right, and sorry about that, but shalom, 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 everybody. So this is Evangelist James, and I'm with the King James Bible University, coming out of Durham, North Carolina. And before we get started in this teaching, we do want to make it known, as we always do, that we here at King James Bible University and the House of the Lost Sheep of Israel, we are not affiliated with any Christian organizations, nor are we affiliated with any Christian denominations or any Christian groups. We are not affiliated with any camp groups or any Hebrew Black Street Israelite camps or any group or organization outside of King James Bible University and the House of the Lost Sheep of Israel. We stand alone, and we only hold to the 1611 King James Bible with the Apocrypha, the sovereign King James Bible. So that's what we stand on, and that's what we always will hold to. So with that, I'd like to thank everybody for coming out to this lesson. So the name of this lesson that we'll actually be getting into tonight is entitled Pride, the Fear of Exposure. So this is what we're actually going to be looking at. So getting into this lesson. So this lesson right here is something that, as we go into this, is something that I want us to make sure that we understand as we move forward. See, when we looking at pride, it's something we have to understand about pride. See, pride is a rebellion. That's how we have to see it, no matter what. But we have to understand pride and fear. See, a lot of us will look at pride and fear. A lot of us will look at them separate as two different things. We'll say, well, pride and fear is not the same thing, but is that truth? See, that's what we have to consider. That's what we're going to find out. So but in this lesson, we have to see how these two are actually connected. So I'm going to make sure that I slow down, I take my time, and I'm just going to speak to you guys today. So we have to understand, when we're looking at this pride and this fear of exposure, that's what we're looking at. See, we have to understand that pride begins when the heart departs from God. So it's the desire to appear elevated in one's life. See, this leads to the rebellion against Jehovah's ways, because the heart has shifted its desires, not towards Jehovah, but it's shifted its desires inward. It's shifted its path inward towards itself. But the fear, see, it's not separated from the pride. See, the fear of exposure, see, this can be seen just as a byproduct. It can be seen as the secondary result of the action. Meaning, because once we start operating in pride and we choose not to do certain things, such as we'll even seek to even hide our sin and our wrongs. See, once we recognize what those issues are. So in order to actually keep our reputation intact, that's what happens. Is the fear of exposure is the result of not wanting to be exposed for who we actually are. That's what actually happens. See, when we sit there and we say things like, well, I fear speaking, or I fear to do this or that, or I fear speaking to this person or that person. See, that fear is not because of a person themselves. It's because of the fear of exposure of what we actually trying to hide. That's where it comes from. Something that whatever we don't want to be exposed. And that's the pride. Because you've already exalted yourself in your own mind to be seen in a certain type of way. Because we've already built a self-image. We've already put this standard for ourselves, this reputation or this status. So in order to actually protect that, we'll cover up our shame. We'll hide it. We'll put these masks on and try to hide who we actually are, to avoid the true self being exposed. See, that's what actually happens. Whatever we don't want to be revealed for what it actually is. So the defense mechanism is to cover it up. The fear of exposure of being seen. So that's the fear. But this comes from the pride that is already within oneself that's elevated. That's elevated their mind on how he sees himself and how they want others to see themselves, others to see them. See, this is why the two can't be separated, because one is going to be the result of another. And this is what we have to see and understand in this teaching. So when we looking at pride, see, we're going to deal with pride. See, when we looking at pride, I want to show us something. See, when we're looking at pride, we're going to go over here. We're going to go over here to Sirach. We're going to go to Sirach chapter 10. Let's show you something. Let's see something here. So we're going to go to Sirach or Ecclesiasticus, or Sirach or Ecclesiasticus chapter 10 and verse 12. I want to show us something. In Sirach or Ecclesiasticus chapter 10 and verse 12, it says the beginning. So the beginning of pride is when one departeth from God. So when he departs from God, so this is to turn away. This is to forsake, to leave. So to depart is to turn away from God and his heart. So his desire, you see it here, is turned away from his maker. So we see that when we're looking at pride, see, pride functions as arrogancy. It functions as haughtiness, as loftiness. So pride is a rebellion against Jehovah's ways. So once the heart, that's why you see in his heart, it's turned away from his maker. So once the desires is turned away, see, this is the very moment of forsaking. This is when the rebellion starts, which actually leads to the destruction. That's why we can even see when we go over here to Proverbs chapter 16. He tells us this in Proverbs chapter 16 and verse 18. Proverbs chapter 16, verse 18, it says, pride goeth before destruction, and a haughty spirit before a fall. So we can see that the beginning of pride is when our heart departs from God, when one forsakes or rejects God's way. See, as soon as this happens, then comes the destruction. Then comes the fall. See, that fall is always going to follow behind this pride, this rebellion. But as we can see, it's when one's heart, his desire, is turned away from God. Because we have to remember the heart is the desire. See, that's the pride function as that desire. See, once it's turned away, our desires turns from God. Now our desires now become elevated towards self. See, this is where the pride function comes in. The haughtiness, the loftiness, the arrogancy. This all comes from the desire of the heart that has turned away or forsaken God. This is where we become puffed up and the rebellion starts. So it's the same thing that we can even see is when we go over here to Isaiah. You can even see this here in Isaiah chapter 14. In Isaiah chapter 14, we're going to go to Isaiah chapter 14, verse 13 down to 15. We're going to see it happen in action. And it says, for thou hast said in thy heart, exactly the point. It's going right back to those desires. I will ascend into heaven, and I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will sit also upon the mount of the congregation in the sides of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High. Watch this. Verse 15. Yet thou shalt be brought down to hell, to the sides of the pit. See, that's the fall. So we see how this is working. We're seeing it in action. So we can see this same pride functioning right here with Lucifer's fall. So we can see how this prideful spirit manifested. The rebellion came before the fall actually happened. Again, I'm going to say that the rebellion came before the fall actually happened. That's why I said pride goes before destruction, because it's going to lead up to it. See, operating in pride, having this self-righteous mind, is like digging a pit and then walking yourself right into the same pit that you did. Because this same Lucifer mindset manifests in many of us today. Many of us today. See, this is what happens when we sit there and we make things about self. When we make everything about us. Desiring to be elevated. Desiring to be exalted. Desiring reputation. Notoriety, dominance. But again, it's based on a desire. Desiring to be exalted. Having this reputation. Having this desire to be seen on high. See, that's the rebellion, because that's now your heart don't turn away from God. That's the pride. But again, once all of that happens, once all of this gets brought down, once it's exposed, now that's where the fear comes in. Because the bringing down to hell, when he said, yet thou should be brought down to hell, the bringing down to hell is the destruction, the bottomless pit, the endless despair. See, people fear this. Understand what I'm saying? People fear this, but will still exalt themselves in their own heart. See, what we have to understand is pride and fear. These work together, hand in hand. They not, people say, well, no, that's not the same. No, they the same, because I promise you, we going to see in this teaching, you going to see why we cannot get around this. See, most people believe pride and fear are different, but they not. See, we have to understand that fear functions in two ways. See, this is what we have to understand. See, fear can function spiritually as a desire. See, that's what we've been explaining so far. See, this desire is this exalted mind seeking to appear a certain type of way, which is the pride function of being arrogant, being haughty, being self-willed, rebelling against Jehovah's ways, because the heart, the desire is now departed from God. Now the desire is inward towards self. We focus on self, I, me. That's why you see why I showed us here in this same example. You see it working. Everything is about us, because we're going to make everything about self. But that same desire to be exalted, once is humbled and brought low, that's where the fear function comes in. The fear of exposure, the terror, the dread, the horror. Because we can see in verse 16, watch what happened. Watch how it's working actively. It says, they that see thee shall narrowly look upon thee and consider thee, saying, is this the man that made the earth to tremble, that did shake the kingdoms? See, this is the exposure in action. Once that destruction, once that fall happens. See, this is what people fear. People fear this, especially those with high status and those that have great reputation. People fear losing their reputation. You see how they say, is this the man that made the earth tremble? Hey, wait a minute. See, their notoriety, their reputation is been stripped. It's been exposed. See, people sit there and say, is this that great man? Is this him? Man, he was on top of the world. Everybody respected this guy. So we can see the same examples of this easily when you even look at celebrities today and famous people. See, they will all try to maintain a certain image, a certain reputation to stay elevated. That's the desire. That's the pride actively functioning to keep their status and their reputation. See, they're going to have many followers. They're going to have many supporters. They're going to have many friends and much financial gain. But that's the cover up. That's the image. But if he fall, if he gets humbled and brought low, if he loses all of that, he'll break. Because he was stripped of the image that he built for himself. Now he'll be exposed. Now the same people who supported him now going to be the same people that turn their backs on him. Now they're going to talk about him. Now they're going to bring shame. See, he fears that. He fears the exposure of that. So in order to avoid it, he has to maintain his reputation. He has to maintain his image. He has to maintain his status that he has built for fear of being exposed, for fear of facing shame and humiliation. Because the pride will always lead to the fear because of the desolation. See, and that's the problem. See, this is the problem. That's something that Jehovah, he always will expose that. That's why you see it right there, because this will happen. See, this is why you get back over here. Let's go back over here to Sirach chapter 10. Show us in Sirach chapter 10, and now we hit verse 13. He tells us this is exactly what he'll do. Sirach chapter 10, verse 13 said, for pride is the beginning of sin, and he that have it shall pour out abomination. And therefore, so for that very reason, watch, the Lord, the Creator, brought upon them strange calamities and overthrew them utterly. Exactly. Again, we see how this is working. So once the heart is departed from God, he's going to exalt himself automatically. Once one's desire is departed from God and his desire is inward towards himself, you're going to exalt yourself automatically in some way, shape, form, or fashion and operate in pride because he's operating in sin. But once that sin is exposed, once it's exposed and he's brought low and the destruction comes, that's the fear. That's the terror, the dread, the agony that comes from the pride that was already within him and it was exposed for what it was. That's how it works. See, that's why you can even see over here in 2nd Esdras. Let's go over here to 2nd Esdras chapter 15. 2nd Esdras chapter 15 and verse 18. He says something right here and to prove the point on it. It says, for because, remember that word because I want to show us something on it. For because of their pride, the cities, so the people shall be troubled, and the houses, so these bodies, these temples shall be destroyed, and men shall be afraid. So something I want us to understand when we see because this is a conjunction word. So meaning it provides the reasoning behind something. So I want to actually show us this in the spiritual dictionary because I want to show us because it's going to come up again, but I want to show us right now so we can even see how this is actually working. So we're going to go right here is because. So you see, because is since. You see, so it's established. So this is something that was established based on something. But you see owning to, so that after, in order that. But what I want to show is right here, because this right here that's in red provides the clarification on what we actually looking at. See, because is a conjunction. That's why I was saying that is used to connect two clauses, with the first clause providing the reason for the second clause. That's why I'm saying what I'm saying. So this is why you see, for because of their pride. See, that's the first clause. See, this is providing the reasoning for this. For because of their pride, the city shall be troubled. That's why you're going to be troubled. The houses shall be destroyed, and the men shall be afraid because of their pride. See, that's the reasoning behind the trouble and the fear. So it said because of their pride, this is the reason. For this reason, the people shall be troubled. They shall be in agony. They shall be dismayed. They're going to be afraid. So the houses, the temples, the bodies shall be destroyed. Remember, Proverbs 16:18. Pride goeth before destruction. So this pride functions again as the arrogancy, the haughtiness, the loftiness. This is the rebellion against the way of JEHOVAH. Once the heart, the desire is lifted up and elevated, then comes the destruction and the desolation. And once that happens, men shall be afraid. That's gonna be the result. They're gonna fear because of their pride. That's the reason why. But then people gonna say, oh, well, these is different. Okay, it's not different. Fear is pride, because the fear is there because of the pride which led to the destruction, to the downfall. This is what happens. That's why I say that the pride and fear work hand in hand. See, but now we have to look more at this fear of exposure. We got to look at this. See, we have to look at this fear of exposure. See, the fear functions as dread. It functions as terror, as dismayed, as afraid, as horror. So we have to look at this fear of exposure. See, this is still going to tie you to pride, no matter how you look at it. See, fear is going to work hand in hand with pride. See, now we're looking at this fear function, not as desire, but as the fear function, as dread, as terror, as this being dismayed. See, this fear is still pride because it's against JEHOVAH's way. Because for one thing we got to understand with this is JEHOVAH, he didn't even give us the spirit of fear. That's one thing we got to understand, because he even tell us right here, which we can look at it. He tell us over here in 2 Timothy chapter 1, 2 Timothy chapter 1 and verse 7, all we need is up to the semicolon. He says right here, for God have not given us the spirit of fear. See, this ain't telling you desire. This is the fear function. He tell you, he ain't give us the spirit to be afraid, have dread, to have terror, to have agony. He didn't give us that spirit. So we can see that the spirit of fear did not come from God. He didn't give us this spirit. So we can't sit there and turn it back and try to put it back on God. He ain't give it to us. So if it didn't come from God, then the question is, then where did it come from? You got to answer that from within yourself. Because our issue is with a lot of us, and we don't even realize it. Well, a lot of us don't even realize what we actually do. We like to use fear as an excuse for why we don't actually do something. But is that not still sin? See, this is why I say, while all of this is just going to be an issue for us as we continue to move forward, because I'm going to even show this. Because when we even go over here to Sirach chapter 32, so to even prove the point, he even tell us something. Sirach chapter 32, verse 17, he says, a sinful man, he already telling you, A sinful, male or female, will not be reproved. So he won't be corrected. He won't be disciplined. But he gonna tell you, however, findeth an excuse according to his will. You see this right here? He findeth an excuse according to his will. Why? Because that's his desire. But watch this. But this goes into the same thing. See, some people will say, well, I don't like to ask questions because I fear the response I'm going to get, because I fear receiving backlash. So I don't say anything because I don't want to get shot down. So you fear that. Understand this? Okay, you fear that. I don't like the response I get. They fear that. So what we do, we choose not to say anything. But the same thing is, when you do that, now we trying to protect the image that we done built for ourselves in fear of it actually being exposed. That's the pride. To maintain our self-image. That's our desire. We cover it up as fear. But guess what? When we do that, when you say you won't do something because you fear, guess what? We still make an excuse. You still making an excuse because you're going to give your own reasoning and you're going to do it according to your own will. So if you do something according to your own will, then now that's your desire. The beginning of pride is when one heart departed from God and his heart turneth away from his maker. That's your desire. You're doing your own will. This is pride. When we sit there and make excuses for ourselves to stay the way that we are, because our desire is to appear as we know when we really don't know. That's the pride. But then we choose to make an excuse because we don't want to be corrected. That's the sin. No matter how you look at it. I don't care how you look at it. You can flip this script, turn it upside down, cut it up. I don't care what you do. It's because we're going to justify ourselves. And now I'm going to say it's because of fear. Oh, I'm just nervous. I got anxiety. So I choose not to do certain things. No, it's not because of fear. The fear is because of the pride. We just seen that. But to make ourselves feel good, we want to water it down to just say, oh, it's just fear, so it don't sound as bad. But that's your excuse and our justification when the fear itself is only fear of being exposed for one's own pride. It's not fear just because. The fear came from something. Not wanting to be seen and exposed for who we are. So we'll hide that. We'll mask it and we'll put a label on it and we'll call it fear, anxiety. Oh, I just got a little anxiety. No, we full of pride. That's what we is. Which is still sin no matter how you look at it. Because the fear didn't come from God again. Again, it didn't come from God. The fear didn't come from God. And the pride didn't come from God. They both works of the flesh. When one whose own heart, their desire is elevated upon self and has departed and turned it away from JEHOVAH. See, this is how we're going to strip it down and see it for what it truly is. So same thing is, again, God have not given us the spirit of fear. So this is not something that he bestowed upon us. That means it's contrary to him because it's not of his spirit. It's against him. So if he ain't bestowed it, that let you know it's not of the spirit. So that lets you know it's of the flesh. So we know in Galatians chapter 5. So we know in Galatians chapter 5, he tell us. In Galatians chapter 5 and verse 17, he tell you this. It says, for the flesh lusteth against the spirit. It's contrary to it. And the spirit against the flesh. And these are contrary. Exactly the point. The one to other, so that you cannot do the things that you would. So if we have this fear, this terror, this torment, this dread, then this is clearly an operation of the flesh, which is contrary to the spirit, which is something that we conjured up in our own mind, something that Satan gonna sit there and feed you, but then we gonna turn around and sit there and still make excuses for it? Are we serious? This is what we talking about. We make excuses for our own vain thoughts that we come up with and we think we justified. That's what I'm saying. What are we doing? He telling us something. We go over here to Wisdom of Solomon. Let's look at this. In Wisdom of Solomon chapter 9. Wisdom of Solomon chapter 9. Let's look at this. Wisdom of Solomon chapter 9 verse 14 and verse 15. He tells us something. He says, for the thoughts of mortal men are miserable. Yeah. And our devices are but uncertain. For the corruptible body presseth down the soul, and the earthly tabernacle, well down the mind that museth, that sit there and think upon many things. So we create these thoughts of in our own mind to weigh us down. So this fear, this terror, this dread, this unquietness, this is all from the flesh. This is from operating in the carnal mind, which again is 100% contrary to JEHOVAH, making it what? Completely incompatible with his ways. So what he got to do? He got to separate from it. See, there ain't no other way we're going to actually get around this today, because it's going to show us what it is for what it actually is. He tells us over here in Romans chapter 8. Let's look at this. Let's look at it, because all we doing is just building the point. So the more we go, when we get it, the more we get into it and show these examples, guess what? It ain't going to be no way around it. He tells us in Romans chapter 8, verse 7 and verse 8, he tells us, it says, because, you see that because again, he let you know. That's the reason. The carnal mind is enmity against God. So let you know, it's contrary to him. This is the separation. That's why I say it can't nothing happen with this but a separation. For it is not subject to the law of God, neither in deed, neither in works can be. So then they that are in the flesh cannot please God. I don't care what you do. So having this fear, operating this carnal mind, this is separated from God. Because now when I operate in that way, I'm not subjected to the law of God. It's impossible to actually do so as long as I operate with this carnal mind. So if I respond in fear, then that's still operating in flesh. I can't please God that way, and I never will, because that's still pride, because I won't kill it, because I'm not subjecting myself to JEHOVAH's way. Let me prove the point, because he tells us right here in verse 18, verse 13, let me calm down. Verse 13 of the same chapter, it says, for if you, me, live after the flesh, ye shall die. You're going to be separated from JEHOVAH. But providing, if you through the Spirit do mortify, meaning kill, crucify the deeds of the body, this pride, this fear that we talking about, ye shall live. See, but a lot of us will still make excuses for it. We're going to choose to say, well, I'm fearful. I fear to speak up and say things. See, let me explain something to us. I want to explain something to give us an example of what I'm actually talking about. See, I'm going to explain something to everybody about me. See, I was the type of person that would always sit back and sit in the background. I'm the background type of guy and not say anything. See, that's me. See, but I would convince myself that it was just because I had anxiety and there was fear there. That's what I would say. I tell myself that all day, every day, especially in classes. And I'm not just talking about now. I'm talking about growing up, going to school, going to classrooms. I do the same thing. So especially when being in classes that required open participation. Understand what I'm saying? See, I would never raise my hand to do anything. See, I had this issue, but I would always blame it on the anxiety. Say, well, I just have anxiety. See, again, that's my excuse. That's my reasoning and my justification. But the fact I'm already making an excuse already is sin. That's one thing. And the second thing, the only reason I had fear there was not because of the person or the teacher or the people, but it was the fear of being exposed if I didn't have the correct answer. I didn't want to face the humiliation of being wrong and having to be corrected. That was the fear. So I kept my mouth shut. See, if I kept my mouth shut, that way I could maintain my reputation that I set for myself and not risk exposure. That's the pride. Do we see how this is working? Because my desire was to be seen in a certain type of way in front of people. So I fear the exposure of being wrong. See, I'm sure there's many of us here that have fear being wrong. I'm pretty sure there's many of us here who's had the fear of being wrong. I know that. But the fear, understand what I'm saying? The fear is not because of the person or the individuals themselves. It's because the pride within me that I'm not willing to be corrected and be humbled because I don't want nobody to know that I don't know something. That's the fear of the exposure. And that comes from the pride of a self-exalted mindset. This is how this works. But the same thing is, now that's something that I done conjured up in my own vain mind from my own mortal thoughts operating in the flesh 100%. So I had to kill that. I had to put to death those desires in order to submit to Jehovah. But guess what? But if I don't crucify it, if I don't kill it, now I'm willingly choosing to stay separated from God because of pride, not because of fear, but because of pride, which produces the fear. Because how can I grow closer to the Most High God and he draw nigh to me and me draw nigh to him and Jehovah increase in me if I'm not going to decrease and let go of my own way? That don't work. Provided I choose to keep myself distant from him. Pride does this, not fear. The fear only is from being afraid of the exposure of the pride that we have within ourselves. See, we have to understand. See, some people will sit there and will hide this pride beneath our performance. See, this is where the nakedness, the confusion, and the sin happens. See, now, this is where we turn up the party. Because he's going to show us right here. See, let's go over here to Genesis. See, now we got to see it. Now we got to see it. We got to see it in action. We got to see it in action right here in Genesis chapter 2 and verse 25. Let's see something. Genesis chapter 2, verse 25, he says, and they were both naked. Watch this. The man and his wife, and were not ashamed. So understand something. See, this is before the sin was revealed. See, the nakedness representing the confusion and the shame, the sin. But guess what? They weren't ashamed. So it was no confusion. It was no shame. There was no fear of exposure. So they wasn't ashamed because the nakedness and the shame technically didn't exist until the sin was actually exposed. See, this is the point that we actually making. So they didn't have understanding that they was in sin. So there was no open confusion. There was no shame, nor was there any fear of exposure. Do we understand this? Until after the transgression was their eyes open. Let me show you what I'm talking about. Let's go to Genesis chapter 3. Let's go to Genesis chapter 3. Watch what happens. Genesis chapter 3, starting at verse 7. We're going to take it down to 9. Genesis chapter 3, starting at verse 7. It says, and the eyes, the understandings of them both were open. Do we see this? So when their understandings was opening, that's letting you know that their understanding, something was made known to them. Something was revealed to them. And they understood. So they knew. So they understood that they was naked. Do we understand this? Now they understand they in sin. See, here they want a shame because it won't no shame, won't no confusion. It was no fear of exposure. Here, once they understand, once they recognize it, now they ashamed. This is why this happened. And they sewed fig leaves together and made themselves aprons. So we can see once the sin was made known, once they knew and recognized and understood they was in sin, now comes the shame and the humiliation. That's why they covered themselves. Because of the fear of being exposed for their sin. So it didn't happen. So that fear of exposure did not happen until after the transgression, when their understandings was actually open. So we can see when they hid themselves. So it ain't like they was trying to hide themselves, like they trying to hide, like they hiding behind a wall or something crazy like that. No, they was still out in the open. So, but to hide, understand, to hide, this functions as to conceal, to disguise. So they was trying to disguise it. See, this was the attempt to try to prevent themselves from being seen for who they really were. That's why they sold the fig leaves. That's the cover up. See, fig leaves is going to tie you to prosperity, the peace, the judgment, the blessing. This is appearing fruitful, but it has no fruit. That's the thing. It's only leaves. And the leaves are a covering, a spiritual condition. So in order to hide this sinful condition, by appearing prosperous, by appearing fruitful, by appearing knowledgeable. So choosing to cover up that sin and that shame. See, this is pride at its finest. This is pride at its best. To cover up one's sinful state or condition out of the fear of being exposed for it. Guess what? This is us at its best. We good at doing this. From the very start, we've continued this same thing to this very day in 2026 to try and conceal our sinful condition like nobody don't see who we are. But that is to project a self-image that we've already made for ourselves. Watch what he said in verse 8. And they heard the voice. So they heard the sound. That voice they heard the voice, the sound of the Lord God walking in the garden. So he was walking in the garden, meaning this garden is this vineyard, this people, this place of communion. Just like we are today. That's what I say. Don't play the game in the cool of the day. And Adam and his wife hid themselves from the presence of the Lord God amongst the trees of the garden. So amongst the elders, these teachers, these prophets of the people. So we see. So this letting you know that they heard the voice of the Lord walking in the garden. So when they heard the voice, they heard the sound. So that's letting you know. So if they heard the sound, that's letting you know that this was a messenger that was speaking, that was teaching amongst the people in the garden, in the place of communion. Because we have to remember that Jehovah is going to make himself known through his prophets. That's why this is why he even tell us when we go over here to Deuteronomy chapter 18. That we're going to look at this for a bit because now I got to really lock in on the point on what we even proven. In Deuteronomy chapter 18, verse 18, why it gets so serious for us. He tells us, I will raise them up a prophet, a mouthpiece. You see it, a mouthpiece of God from among their brethren, like unto thee. And I will put my words in his mouth, and he shall speak unto them all that I shall command him. So this prophet is a mouthpiece of God. So if they heard the voice of God, it's going to come through his mouthpiece. That's the point, because Jehovah is going to put his words in this man's mouth, and he's going to speak everything that he has commanded of him. But I want to show us something even with this. Matter of fact, I got to use this side over here because let me go over here to Deuteronomy so we can see in Deuteronomy chapter 4. I want to show us in Deuteronomy chapter 4 and verse 12 because I want to make something known to us. Deuteronomy chapter 4 and verse 12, it says, and the Lord, so the Spirit of God spake unto you. Remember, they heard him out of the midst of the fire. Watch this. You heard the voice of words. You see that? But saw no similitude. Only ye heard a voice. Exactly the point. Because the Lord, the Spirit of God, he does not present himself in a visible form for people to behold. Because God is a spirit. So when he was walking in the garden, he ain't literally walking in the garden. But that's representing that his spirit, his presence is amongst his people. So all you heard was a voice of words. So somebody was speaking Jehovah's words. But the same thing is they hid from it. They concealed themselves from it. But then we go over here, even Christ tells you himself. Let's go over here to John. Let's go to John chapter 10. Let's go to John chapter 10 and verse 27. He says what? What he say? He says, my sheep, so my followers, this is Jehovah speaking, my followers hear my voice, and I know them, and they follow me. So guess what? We ain't following a man, but we following the Spirit, because we hearing the words. We following the voice. So when you hear the voice, you hear the instructions, you hear the judgment, you hear the statutes, you hear the doctrines and teachings, you hear the words of God. But instead of drawing closer to it, guess what? We choose to hide ourselves. Uh-oh. So now what sense does that make? So the fear, looking at the fear as the desire is to stay elevated, to maintain a certain position and not wanting to be exposed. So we choose to conceal that sin and sit back and try to blend in with everybody else, even in his presence, as if he don't see us for who we actually are. Now we all of a sudden think, oh, well, he ain't going to see us. Oh, really? Let me make something clear. I want to make something abundantly clear to us, because for whatever reason, we seem to don't understand how Jehovah actually worked. For whatever reason, we don't seem to understand. This is what we don't seem to understand. Jehovah will equip his messenger. Understand what I'm saying? Jehovah will equip his messenger, his prophet, to see the uncleanness and the sin in people for what it is. They are given the ability to actually do this. So this is no different just as the priests in the law when they looked upon the people and pronounced them unclean, even in the plague of leprosy. I even want to show us this. You can even see how they even did this here. I want to show us. Leviticus chapter 13. Leviticus chapter 13, because I'm only showing us this to prove a point. Leviticus chapter 13 and verse 3. I want to show us something. He said, and the Spirit of God spake unto Moses and Aaron, saying, when a man, so when a male or female, shall have in the skin of his flesh a rising, a scab, or a bright spot, and it be in the skin of his flesh like the plague of leprosy, then he should be brought unto Aaron the priest, or unto one of his sons the priest. Watch this. And the priest shall look upon the plague in the skin of the flesh. And when the hair of the plague is turned white, and the plague in sight be deeper than the skin of his flesh, it is the plague of leprosy. And the priest shall look upon him and pronounce him unclean. So we see this plague is this pestilence, this disease, this sickness. So we can see this plague of leprosy is the disease. This is a corruption in the flesh. But the point is, you see how when the priest looks upon it and he pronounces his condition unclean, because he can see it. So they can see the corruption. They can see this plague. They can see that this sickness that's upon this people. So they can clearly see this sin and this moral corruption. See, this is the point that I'm making. But this is actually a spiritual condition, because we can even see an example of this right here in action of it happening when we go over here to 2 Chronicles chapter 26, starting at verse 19. And we even going to see it right here to make it even clear for us. In 2 Chronicles chapter 26, and we're going to hit verse 19 and we're going to take it to verse 20. 2 Chronicles chapter 26, verse 19 and verse 20. And he tells us, it says, then Uzziah was wroth and had a censer. So that censer is his desires. That's his burning desires of what's in his heart. But it's going to reveal what's actually there in his power to burn incense. So watch this. And while he was wroth with the priest, the leprosy, so the sin, the uncleanness even rose up in his forehead. So it rose up in his forehead, meaning it's in his understanding. It's in his mind, because he's full of pride and his sin is being revealed. That's what's happening. In the presence of the priest in the house of the Spirit of God from beside the incense altar. But watch this. And Azariah, the chief priest, because he gonna see it for what it is. And all the priests looked upon him. Same thing you see here in the law. They looked upon him, and behold, remember, he was leprous in his forehead. So they could see it. They could see his sin. They saw his spiritual condition. They could see his corruption. We get this. And they thrust him out from thence. So they got to remove him. They had to get rid of him. Yea, he himself hasted also to go out, because of the Spirit of God has smitten him. Why? Because that was that punishment. See, this plague that was brought upon Uzziah, this served as judgment or punishment upon him because of his pride, because his heart was departed from God. He exalted himself and tried to put himself in the priest's office, in the priest position, when that office didn't belong to him. So we see the same pattern, but in different scenarios, because the outcome is still the same. Pride goes before destruction. So his spiritual condition, this leprosy and this corruption within him, was revealed and made known. So he was morally and spiritually corrupted, not just outwardly, but from within his own mind, from within his own heart. Because the point is, these priests could see it. They could see that he was in sin. They looking right at him. That's the point. But you have people today, in this day and time, that believe that nobody can see them for their sin. Are we serious? When it's Jehovah that has given his mouthpiece the ability to discern what's actually going on. That's a gift. That's a gift that he's actually given to his prophet. That's why you can even see when you go over here to 1 Corinthians, people, that this is a spiritual gift. That's why you see in 1 Corinthians chapter 12, we're going to hit verse 4 and we're going to take it down to verse 7. Then we're going to jump to 10. 1 Corinthians chapter 12, starting at verse 4, it says, now there are diversities of gifts, but the same Spirit. And there are differences of administrations, but the same Lord. And there are diversities of operations, but it's the same God which worketh all in all. But the manifestation of the Spirit is given to every man to profit withal. Now watch this. We're going to see exactly the one I'm talking about. In verse 10, you see it right here. It says, to another, the working of miracles, to another, prophecy, to another, discerning the spirits. That's a gift. So this discerning of the spirits is a spiritual gift, having an ability, the gift to discern, the gift to comprehend and to distinguish good from evil. He can see you exactly for who you are and what spirit is there. That's why you can even see, which we even see right here. We're going to go over here. Malachi. Yeah. So we're going to see in Malachi chapter 3. That's why you can even see. We go over here to Malachi chapter 3. Malachi chapter 3, and we'll hit verse 18. He tell us what it does. He says, then shall you return and what? And discern, meaning and distinguish between the righteous and the wicked, between him that serveth God and him that serveth him not. Why? Because you can clearly see it. Exactly the point. Because he can see that. That's why I keep saying. So this messenger who has this gift, he can clearly see the difference. He can clearly see who's truly serving God and who's not. He can see your sin. I'm making this clear. He can see your spiritual condition because he's looking right at you. He don't have to go and think about this and try to figure this out. This is a gift that JEHOVAH has given him. But then we think he don't see us. I'm telling you. But then we going to say, well, I was afraid, so I hid myself. I was in fear, so I went the other way. I didn't want to say nothing. Okay, it's craziness. It's craziness. This doesn't change. See, we can even see in the prophets, even with Elijah. He even tell us, we even see in the prophet. Let's go over here to Elijah. He tell us right here in 1 Kings chapter 18. And let's see it. In 1 Kings, we're going to see the same thing. In 1 Kings chapter 18, you're going to see verse 21, verse 22. Watch how he clearly makes this distinguishment. Remember here, you should discern between the righteous and wicked. He going to clearly distinguish this. Watch how he does this. And then Elijah came unto all the people. Watch what he did and said, how long halt ye between two opinions? How long we going to do this? So providing the Lord be God, the Spirit of God, JEHOVAH be God, follow him. But if it's Baal, then follow him. And guess what? And the people answer him not a word. This ain't no different from today. As soon as we get questioned on something, then we ain't got nothing to say because we don't want to get exposed. But that's okay. It said, then said Elijah unto the people, even I only remain a prophet, a mouthpiece of the Spirit of God. But Baal's prophets, his mouthpieces, are 450 men. So you can see, he didn't have to think about this. He made his clear distinguishment between the righteous and the wicked. Elijah already knew that he only remained a prophet, a mouthpiece of JEHOVAH. And all these other 450 men was of Baal. They was all wicked mouthpieces of Satan. See, Elijah didn't have to go through all these men to see and determine who was wicked and who wasn't. He already knew it. He's seen it. He already knew when he got there. That was all wicked. Because he could see exactly who they were. Because this spiritual corruption was evident. So it doesn't change no matter where you go in scripture. See, this is a gift, a spiritual gift that JEHOVAH gives to his prophet to do this. You're going to see it in the law. As we shown, you're going to see it in the prophets as we shown, and you're going to see it in the New Testament. That's why I'm going to show us there too. Because the same thing that we're going to see with Yahushua. He was doing this, but for whatever reason, we think it's a game. I don't know why we playing this game. And then we don't act like we don't know what we're dealing with. That's why you see when we go over here to Luke, let me show you something. When we go over here to Luke chapter 6, I want to show us. Let's get over here. We go over here to Luke chapter 6. In Luke chapter 6, we're going to hit verse 6 and verse 7. I want to show us something. Luke chapter 6, verse 6 and verse 7. It says, and it came to pass also on another Sabbath that he, Yahushua, this is Yahushua, he entered into the synagogue and taught. And there was a man whose right hand was withered. Watch this. And the scribes and Pharisees watched him. Pay attention to their behavior. The scribes and Pharisees watched him, whether he will heal on the Sabbath day, that they might find an accusation against him. See, this is their thought. These scribes and Pharisees, they was trying to find a way to accuse him. See, they ain't no different from snakes. See, this is why he always called. That's why you see why he say, you generation of vipers, you generation of vipers. That's why he said, because they snakes. They accusers. But then these same snakes, they'll try to charm you and manipulate you because they skillful in their speech. They know how to talk and speak in smooth ways to get you caught up. But guess what? You think you're going to fool Guess what? The prophet, you think you're going to fool Jehovah's prophet? Because watch what happened. I'm going to let the scripture show you. Watch what happened in verse 8. But he knew their thoughts. Exactly the point. Shut the front door. They got all this planned out on what they finna do. And he's sitting there, but he knew their thoughts. Exactly the point. He knew their intentions. He see them. He looking right at, he see them. And said to the man which had the wither, guess what? He still don't change. Guess what? He see it. Guess what? He don't change what he doing. Watch he said. And to the man which had a withered hand, rise up and stand forth in the midst. And he arose and stood forth. So we can clearly see Yahushua. He knew their thoughts. He knew their intentions of these scribes and these Pharisees. He knew that they was looking to do him in, to find a way to accuse him. This is what you're going to see. See, and I'm gonna actually show it to us. See, these scribes and these Pharisees. See, when you sit there and when you look at it and when you read it and you see it, see, they would only ask questions to try and appear a certain type of way. See, they even challenge his understanding. See, even today, people today will do the same thing and will ask questions to try and appear elevated. To appear like they know something. People do the same thing today. And I'm going to show it to us. No, don't worry. I'm going to show it to us in the scripture. And then I'm going to show you exactly we do the same thing. But they was hiding their true intentions. But again, he already knew their thoughts. He knew who they were. He knew who they were as soon as he walked in the dang place. So you think Jehovah's prophet today don't know our thoughts when we approach him? Is this what we think? But we think we fooling somebody, just like Yahushua, because he could discern them. He could see it. He could see they sin. He could see them for who they were. He could see that they were snakes. That's why I said that's why he called them generation of vipers, because they were serpents. They was deceivers, accusers, charmers. See, I'm going to show you how they even try to come in this way, because some will even try to come like they upright, and they'll try to flatter you and attempt to hide their true intentions. I'm going to show it. You know what? We ain't hiding anything. I'm going to show it. So let's go over here to Mark chapter 12. Because I want to show us. I want to show it. Pay attention to how they moving. I want to show it to us. Watch this. Look over here to Mark chapter 12, verse 12. Watch this. Mark chapter 12, we're going to hit verse 12 and we're going to take it to 14. Yup, Mark chapter 12, verse 12 down to 14. Watch what happened. Let me see here. Yeah, I'll highlight the whole thing. It'll be okay. Mark chapter 12, verse 12. It says this. And they sought to lay hold on him, but feared the people. So let's stop right there. So they sought to lay hold on him, but feared the people. So guess what? That's the fear. But that's the fear of being exposed. That's the point. See, again, that's where it comes in. But it's based on they weren't going to risk themselves getting exposed for what they was actually doing, because they knew that they was being spoken against. They knew this. They knew they was being spoken against and that the truth was going to expose them. So they had to fall back. That's why you see it said, for they knew that he had spoken the parable against them, and they left him and went their way. So they had to be cool. See, that's how a snake move. See, when he see he ain't got no opening and he see that he might get exposed, guess what? Fear of exposure, he'll fall back. Understand how you working. It's because they knew they couldn't say anything that was going to expose them. So they feared that. So they couldn't speak against what he was doing because they couldn't find no fault in him. That's the point. Because Yahushua, he was just speaking truth. That's it. Speaking these parables and these dark sayings unto the people. So the Pharisees, they feared the people. Not just out of fear of the people just themselves, but out of fear of exposure for who they really are. Because Yahushua, he's speaking truth against them. He's actually exposing their way, but out of fear of exposure for who they really are, they sitting there, they weren't willing to risk themselves getting exposed. So they had a reputation to keep. That's why they left. They couldn't catch him up. So they had to be cool about it. Because you have people who will actually do this today. See, when they can't come against the doctrine, they'll always try to find a way to find something else. They nitpick. See, they can't come against the doctrine that you teach, but they try to find error. Any little error in you to try to accuse you and even challenge you. See, this is what they do. And we're going to see this here. But keep in mind, again, pay attention to how they approached him. Pay attention to the approach. Verse 13, it said, and they sent unto him certain of the Pharisees and of the Herodians to catch him in his words. Please understand what's happening. Watch this. And when they were come, watch this. They said unto him, Master, Master, we know that thou art true, in your profession to be the truth, and carest for no man. For thou regardest not the person of men, but teaches in the way of God and truth. Is it lawful to give tribute to Caesar or not? You see how they do this? You see how they come and they approach with this flattery and this charming approach? Exactly the point. A snake. That's how he moved. But now he revealed himself, because now he's sitting there and try to challenge his understanding. He immediately exalted himself because now he's trying to challenge his understanding. So that's the point that I was making. But Yahushua, he already knew this, because again, you already see here, he knew their thoughts. He know what they about. But again, you see this question they had? They only asked that question to try and appear a certain type of way. But the underlying intention was always here, to catch him in his words. That was the underlying intention, but their approach was in a way of flattery. But he already knew their intentions. That's the point, because he can see it. He can discern it. But this right here, again, is no different from how people do today. Right now, to this very day. People here amongst this body, right here, right now, will ask questions to just try to see how they can catch up the teacher. To try to challenge his understanding. But then going to try to come off and appear harmless. See, you think we playing the game? See, I'll give us an example. See, not too long ago, we had a guy here right now. He still sit over here. But he got removed from the back for the same type of thing. See, he called himself coming in the Zoom, challenging the pastor here. See, he even tried to point out something on a document that the elder did for a teaching. And then when he got in the Zoom, he called himself correcting the pastor in the Zoom. Because he thought he found an error. He thought he found a fault. He thought he found an accusation. And then later on, when they got checked on what they was doing, now they made an excuse for it. Why? Because he didn't want to get exposed. He got to find a way to cover himself up. That's the fear of exposure. Then they going to come back later, and when they was questioned again, they going to say, well, let me take you somewhere, and then they going to talk about it once they get there. Guess what? Now he called himself teaching the teacher. And that's the pride. Because now this man has now already elevated himself to a point where he thinks he's knowledgeable. And he's going to prove something. Because he's already full of pride. Because he thinks he's right. He thinks he's going to prove a point. And then he ended up getting checked and ended up getting removed. But he sit there and try to defend himself so he wouldn't get exposed, but he got exposed anyways. But this is what we talking about. And that's why I'm telling that ain't nothing new under the sun. So that was just a clear example for us to see that's exactly how this works. Same thing you see in here, same thing that happens today. But the same exact ones who will do this, these are the same ones that's going to come up and say, oh, pastor, oh, elder, oh, pastor, elder, I got a question. So it will appear as a question, but then comes with underlying intentions. This is no different from these Pharisees and these scribes that came to Yahushua. They called him master. You see? They called him master. They calling him master, teacher. They called him master. They called him teacher. So the same thing goes back to the same day today. Oh, we know you a man of God. We know you teaching the way of God. We know you teach the truth. But then you try to find accusation and challenge his understanding as if you're going to manipulate his understanding. See, again, It's no different. People with these same intentions will come here and say, just as they call it, they're going to come with this flattery and say, elder, pastor, man, you be teaching. Man, you be teaching the truth. These ain't no different from charmers, but then be the same ones who will hide a spiritual condition and will still hide a sin and their true intentions, as if nobody sees you. But then you'll sit there and turn around, seek to find fault in the messenger. But again, like I said, JEHOVAH, he gives this gift to discern spirits. So this messenger, again, who's been given the gift, this gift has the ability to see our sin. Just as the priests in the law who looked upon the plagues of the people and declared them unclean, the sin and the uncleanness that was there, just as Elijah and the prophets who declared himself a prophet of JEHOVAH amongst the 400 wicked prophets of Baal, just as in the New Testament as Yahushua who knew the thoughts and the evil intentions of the Pharisees that sought to accuse him. He's going to make sure that this separation and this distinguishment is clear. Jehovah's messenger today is given the same gift to discern the spirits of the people. So understand this. God don't change. It's just a different day. It's just a different day. But I just wanted to point all of that out to us. So from here, all of us can understand and see and understand. When people believe that they can hide their sin, that's because we don't want to be exposed for what it actually is. But that condition is always made known because he can see it. He going to see it on us, but we want to hide it. So when it gets back over here to Genesis, see how to go all the way around and to get us back to this point so you can even see, and you can see what's going on. They ain't hiding from him. That's why you see back over here in Genesis chapter 3, verse 9, he said, and the Lord God called unto Adam and said unto him, where art thou? So he's calling to him out of that vessel. So he not saying where you at, like he physically looking for him. It don't say, where are you? It don't say that. It says, where art thou? So this art is your perfection and beauty. So he asking, where's your perfection and beauty? Dude, you naked. Where your covering? This shows he already see that we in sin. That perfection and beauty isn't there because we not covered. Because we naked. So the spiritual function that activates this is the nakedness, which the nakedness is the confusion, the shame, the defilement, the sin. So these here, that exposes the fear of being found out. This is why you can see. Watch what happened in verse 10. Watch what happened. Watch this. And he said, and we said, I heard that voice. Yeah. I heard that voice in the garden. Yeah, we heard one of his messengers speaking his words. Yeah, we showed in. Watch this. And I was afraid. You see how we gave our reasoning? Because I told you, because I was naked. Exactly the point. And I hid myself. We told on ourselves. See, this afraid is telling you being in fear, being terrified, troubled, discouraged. You see this. So you can see how that because, again, is right here. That's the reasoning. Because, see, that's connecting the two clauses that you see here. I was afraid because I was naked. You see that. I was afraid and I was naked. Because of our spiritual condition, our hearts departed from God. So we was operating in pride. That's why the fear is there. That's why he's saying I was afraid, because now we know that we in sin. We know what we was doing. Now we recognize our shame, our disgrace, our humiliation. That's why we fear. Not because of the person. We fear because we know we're going to get exposed for our wrong. We don't want nobody to see that. This image of this false self that we trying to maintain. That's why we afraid. So this fear, this terror, this dread did not come until they understood that they were in sin. Even though they was already there, the shame and the fear of exposure didn't actually exist until the transgression was actually made known. So when that happens, now they hid themselves out of fear of being exposed for their sin and their shame. That's why they chose to conceal what they did not want to be seen. But the same thing is, he even tells us when we go over here to Ecclesiasticus or Sirach. Second Esdras chapter 16. Second Esdras chapter 16, verse 63. He telling you, Second Esdras chapter 16, verse 63, it says, surely he knoweth your inventions. He know our device. He know our plots and our schemes. He know all the stuff that we come up with and what we think in our hearts. He said, what you think in our heart. Exactly. What we think in our desires, not his desire, what we think in our desires. Even them that sin and would hide their sin. He telling us everything. So these inventions are from the heart. These are the desires to appear as something that we not, to be self-elevated. That's all it is, to appear righteous. But the fear is being exposed for the false self, meaning you don't want nobody to see you for who you really are. That's what our issue is. This is what people are scared of. They're not scared of the person. You ain't scared of the person. It ain't the individual. It's not the man. But we scared of the shame of the outcome. We scared of the shame of the humiliation that can come with the wickedness being revealed. We afraid of that. That's what we be afraid of. See, this is the perpetual shame of a hidden thing to keep it concealed in secret instead of it being exposed and potentially corrected. So we still choose to hide it and stay in that condition. It's crazy. Craziness. But this is what we do. What's wrong with us? He tells us something in Proverbs. Proverbs chapter 28. Proverbs chapter 28. Let me show you. Proverbs chapter 28 and verse 13. He tells us. Proverbs 28 verse 13 says, he that covereth his sins shall not prosper. But whoso confesseth and forsaketh them shall have mercy. See, this is why many of us, we can struggle to grow. And we can't grow. We can't prosper like we want to, like we say we desire to. Because we sitting there and we trying to cover stuff up. See, the same ones that's going to say, we can sit there and we can have an issue that we know that we need to get worked out. We can have this issue and we might need some help. And we might need some guidance. But then we choose to not bring it up and do anything about it. See, Jehovah already knows what our issues are. He just going to see what we going to do. Because the first thing we going to say is, I'm just a little fearful. I'm quiet. I'm nervous. I got anxiety. I'm a little scared to say something. Why? Because if I say that now, I don't want nobody to look at me a certain type of way. Because I don't know what type of response that I'm going to get. I don't want to be humiliated. I don't want to be embarrassed. I don't want to face shame if people see me for who I am. You see all those eyes there? You see how I'm making everything about self? You see the pride? You see what I'm saying? You see how it ain't no way around? But we'll hide that behind people when it's not actually about the people. But we'll say, oh, it's because I fear people or the person's reaction. When it's not that. You don't fear the person. We fear the exposure. We fear being seen as naked, just as we did in the garden. So we sowed fig leaves to cover up the shame. Not because of a person. We trying to cover the sin. The same thing we do today. In this garden, in the congregation, in the place of communion, we sowing leaves. We trying to cover our shame, to keep the appearance of an image that we done built for ourselves, to blend in, to appear righteous, so we can tell ourselves, I'm not like that. That's not me. I'm greater than that. I'm better than that. Yeah, keep telling yourself that. Guess what? That's the pride. So that's the denial. And once the denial comes in, then guess what? That leads to the excuses and the justifications. So we won't confess our sins and our iniquities or even seek help, but instead make excuses for it. Then we're going to turn around and we're going to put it right back on God. He said, who told you was naked? Where you get this from? And we going to say, well, Lord, it's the woman you gave me. Lord, it's the spirit you gave me. It was what you presented to me. You shouldn't have shown it to me. And this wouldn't have happened. See, this is what we do. All because we don't want to break this pride. We don't want to break it. We actually tell us this when we go over here, back over here in Leviticus. He actually tells us exactly what we actually need to do. We go over here to Leviticus chapter 11 and show it to us. In Leviticus chapter 11, we'll hit verse 33. He actually tells us exactly what we're supposed to be doing. Leviticus chapter 11, verse 33, it says, in every earthen vessel, us, these mortal bodies, where into any of them falleth, then guess what? All of us have fallen. Can't nobody say they haven't, because if you say you haven't, you're lying. It said, whatsoever is in it shall be unclean, and you shall break it. Exactly the point. So this earthling vessel, this is us, this clay, these mortal bodies that's full of sin. Just as the leprosy that was in the skin of the flesh, the uncleanness is absorbed into the substance of the vessel. But this earthling vessel has to be broken. It can't be cleansed. You can't cleanse it. You got to break it. That's the difference. So we already seen earlier that the flesh is contrary to the spirit. So it has to be crucified. It got to be put to death in every work of it, everything that's in it. But then we're going to turn around and make excuse for fear. What is it? I got fear. This fear is of the flesh. This pride is of flesh. So it has to be broken. That's all you can do is break it. You got to break it. Do y'all get what I'm saying? So even break it even closer. So if I got a thought process, if I got a thought process and if it's wrong, I got to break it no matter what. I can't sugarcoat it. I can't put a Band-Aid on. I can't say, well, it kind of, no, you break it. That's the key for I understand. Whatever my thoughts are, it's carnal. It don't got nothing to do with Jehovah. It has to be broken. It can't be restored. It can't be redeemed. You can't put it together. You can't put no tape on it. You can't put no Band-Aid on it. See, what most of us don't understand, and I'll make this, see, this is what our problem is. Most of us don't understand. If pride isn't broken, the fear ain't going nowhere. See, that's what we don't even understand. That's what our problem is. It's always going to be, most people think, see, if most people, we sit there and think, well, if I could just get rid of this fear, if I could just get rid of this fear of speaking, if I could just get rid of this fear. No, 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 no. The fear is there because of the pride. You ain't getting rid of the fear if the pride don't get broken. So you ain't gonna put no dang Band-Aid on it. No, break it. It has to be completely broken. The flesh has to be completely condemned. This is the only way to move past this. You ain't doing it no other way. I don't care how you want to flip it. You ain't doing. Many of us, again, will refuse to do this because we won't break it. Because we're going to hold on to pride. We're going to hold on to our own desires and our own standards that we have set for ourselves. But again, the issue is people believe that they can just break fear, but don't understand why it's not happening. Because you can't just break fear alone, because the fear is attached to the pride. That's the point. That's why it can't be broken. But people continue to say, well, shoot, why I can't get over this fear? Why I can't get over this anxiety? Why I can't? Listen, because you're not cutting it from its root. It comes from pride. Pride is you trying to look at, well, let me get rid of this fear. No, you full of pride. Get rid of the pride. Break the pride. The fear gonna disappear. That's why we can't get rid of it. But we're not seeing that. The only reason the fear is there because we fear being exposed, because we don't put ourselves on a certain level that we don't want to get checked and we don't want to take correction. That's why it's there. See, when a lot of people look at fear and desire, a lot of people look at it, and a lot of us try to be self-elevated. We set standards. We set this reputation and this status for ourselves. This is why some people would just try to come up with questions to just try to appear elevated, to appear knowledgeable. And then what happens? People get fear being exposed for what they don't actually know. So it's not a thing of the fear of the person that people are worried about. It's not that, but it's the exposure that people fear. But it's the pride that's causing us to have that fear of exposure. So if the pride isn't broken, the fear ain't going nowhere. But that's the problem, because Jehovah already told us how we actually supposed to come to him. He tell us this. He tell us right here in Psalms chapter 34. He tell us something. In Psalms chapter 34, I want to show us. In Psalms chapter 34 and verse 18. Slow down. Psalms chapter 34, verse 18. And it says, the Lord. So the Spirit of God is nigh unto them that are of a broken heart, and saveth such as be of a contrite spirit. See what he's saying? So this is speaking of those that Jehovah, who he can actually draw nigh unto. This is who he can draw close to. those that are willing to be broken. He ain't tell you to come to him perfect like you got this. No, you got to come with a willing heart. Those that's willing to be broken, having this state of repentance and humility. So you're not trying to hide anything. You're not trying to come with a reputation. You're not coming with notoriety. You're not coming with a status. You're not coming to him with your own standards that you set. You're not coming with your own puffed up mindset. You're not trying to conceal anything. All you have is a completely broken vessel. So this is the same thing that we even see here when we go over here to Mark. This is why you even see this. You even see this when we go over here to Mark chapter 14. That's why we see it. In Mark chapter 14 and verse 3. Mark chapter 14 and verse 3. Mark chapter 14 and verse 3. That's why you see it says, and being in Bethany. Bethany is telling you about this house of misery, this house of the poor. In the house of Simon the leper. Watch this. As he sat at meat, there came a woman having an alabaster box of ointment of spikenard, very precious. What she do? And she break the box and poured it on his head. So now we can see this woman, Mary. You can see how she completely breaks this box. She completely breaks this vessel. So she's not concealing anything. That's the point. But she broke it. She broke the vessel and poured out everything, showing complete humility without any concealment or any hidden thing. So this is the point that we're making. The only way for Jehovah to actually fill a vessel is for a vessel to actually come broken in humility, to come with nothing to offer but themselves so he can build new. But people don't see, what people don't see is fear is not just, oh, I'm just fearful. Fear shows that you are willing to conceal something. You willing to keep yourself away from God. You willing to conceal yourself. You willing to hide something because it's something that you don't want to actually be exposed. See, again, I'm going to use myself as an example. I'm going to use myself again. I would never want to appear weak. This is what I had an issue with. I didn't want to appear weak. So I always try to put on a front to appear confident and strong in front of people. See, that's the act. That's the act I was putting on. That's the performance. See, that's why I would never reach out and ask questions or even just ask for help within itself, because I never wanted it to seem like I was begging or I was weak or I was in need, even when I really needed it. I won't finna feel like I was begging for something, but that's still a performance because I'm trying to hide a weakness. So Jehovah, he's not fooled nor oppressed by the outward performance. But then behind the scenes, when the curtains close, that's when the truth was revealed. From countless bad decisions with money, with lust, with procrastination. See, all these things, it was then made evident. Now I see my sin, my nakedness, my shame, my confusion. So now I fear. So now my fear of exposure come in. Watch this. So now my fear of weakness of being exposed, my frailty. I fear the shame. I now fear the shame and the humiliation and the embarrassment that would potentially come if that was actually seen and exposed. So that's when the tears, the guilt, the shame, the disgrace, that's when it was exposed once the lights turned off. The doubt, the worries, which all these things is things that I created in my own head. These vain thoughts, these corruptible things that weighed me down. But I feared it being exposed. But then once I got around people again, I put on the same exact mask of confidence, the false appearance, the false image, because that way I could maintain and protect my image that I built for myself. So I wouldn't be seen in a certain type of way, but how I wanted people to see me, because I knew my spiritual condition. I knew my sin, but I had to hide it. Just like the fig leaves, because I wanted to maintain the image that I built, telling myself that I'm strong, that I'm confident, that I'm tough, that the desire, that's the pride I had within me that I elevated myself in. So I had to work hard to maintain this false image, but that's the desire, the pride function, because I'm elevating myself. But again, I fear. Now you see the fear function come in. So now, because I'm fearing exposure for people to see me for who I really am. So it wasn't because of the fear of people themselves, but it was because I didn't want my nakedness to be revealed openly. See, this is why I say it goes right back. They're going to go right back to the same thing in Proverbs 28:13. He that covereth his sin shall not prosper, but whosoever confesseth and forsaketh them shall have mercy. So a man who covereth his sins shall not prosper. So he can't increase. He can't be abundant. He can't be filled with Jehovah's blessings while still concealing sin. It's impossible. So he'll always find himself stagnated because he refuses to break the vessel in its entirety, because he refused to break the pride. He said, well, fear, I have an issue with fear. Okay, you ain't going to get rid of it because you won't break the pride. So the false image that he's exalted within himself, this is the issue. And it's crazy because he even knows if he breaks it, then everything he's built for himself, his image of his false self, his reputation, his notoriety, his status, his standards, his own standards, even to appear knowledgeable when he's really not. He knows all of that. All of that has to get exposed, revealing that he wasn't who he thought he was. So guess what? You got to let it all go. But you know what the problem is? A lot of us won't let it go because a lot of us don't even realize the breaking, the letting go, the losing of one's reputation that you've built. The breaking of the vessel is the step to surrender. A lot of us can't even see that. We can't even see. We can't even see it. But we fear, but our issue is we fear what comes with the exposure more than desiring the healing. So we fear what comes with the exposure more than we desire the healing. This is us. This is us one-on-one. You can't make this stuff up. See, some of us, again, we're going to say, well, I'm not going to let it go. Okay, guess what? I'm going to make sure I'm going to beat this thing into it. I guarantee you, most people probably saying, man, I wish this dude just shut up. Okay, guess what? Find another channel because I'm going to beat this into it so we get the point. See, like I said, a lot of us will sit there and we'll ask things to appear elevated, to even appear knowledgeable. But some people don't like to be questioned and be put in the hot seat. Because when we receive correction, we sit there, we got an issue because the thing is, there's nothing where correction is going to come off soft and gentle. That's what we want. See, we say, well, it should be soft and gentle. Okay, that's your standard that you set. But that's our issue because we want it to come a certain type of way. A lot of us just fear being wrong. Like I said, we fear being corrected. We don't want to be embarrassed, as we say. But again, all of this is pride. I'm going to show you. I'm going to prove the point again. Let's go ahead to Proverbs chapter 15. Let's go to Proverbs chapter 15. Proverbs chapter 15, verse 10. It says something. It says, correction. So reproof is grievous unto him that forsaketh the way. Remember that? And he that hateth reproof shall die. He's going to be separated. So you see how it says correction is grievous to him that forsaketh the way? So at the beginning of this teaching, we went somewhere. And I'm gonna bring this point back up again to even prove the point again. We went over here to Sirach. Let's look at it again. In Sirach chapter 10, verse 12, it says, the beginning of pride is when one departeth from God, and his heart is turned away from his maker. So this is what we showed at the very beginning of this teaching. So this pride, this rebellion, this desire to be elevated, whose heart is turned away from his maker. So this clearly shows one who refuses to receive correction is operating in pride. It's clear. One who refuses correction is operating in 100% pride, no matter how you look at it. But then, watch how it goes back here. Because then we're going to see how all of this is going to blend right together. Back over here in Sirach chapter 32, verse 17. But a sinful man will not be corrected, be reproved, but findeth an excuse for his will, according to his will. So I had to add all three of these together so we can see how all of this is working. See, once a man is full of pride, once a man is full of pride, his desire is turned away from God. Now his desire turns inward to himself. So when the correction comes from Jehovah's mouthpiece, Jehovah, he going to speak his words through his prophet. So when correction comes through Jehovah's mouthpiece, speaking the words of God, when that truth is presented, again, the truth can hurt. But when we don't want to receive it, that's because the sinful man will not be corrected. He ain't going to be, but he's not going to receive the correction, but he's going to find an excuse and a justification for it. When he already sees your sin, he already sees you for what you are, but we don't want to see it. we don't want it to be exposed. But we find the correction, remember, the correction is grievous unto him that forsaketh the way. Because you're already operating in pride, so you find the correction grievous. You find it oppressive. We find it harsh. We find it to be painful. We find it to be cruel. So guess what? We reject it and we hide ourselves from it. Guess what? As soon as you do that, again, you turning your heart away from God because you're not willing to receive Jehovah's discipline from his word. But then we make it our excuse now to maintain our self-image that we've built, to cover the shame and the disgrace that we now actually recognize because our eyes is open to it. We just don't want nobody else to see it, but he already see it. So the same thing is, I'm going to bring up the point again. When people say that they don't ask questions out of fear. Understand this. When people say they don't ask questions out of fear, again, you're not doing it out of fear of the vessel. You're doing it out of fear of being exposed by the vessel. For one, when we say we don't ask questions because of fear, for one, we already done made our excuse. Just like that. Soon as you say, well, I don't ask questions out of fear, you already done made your excuse and our justification. So now all we doing is starting to condemn ourselves, because the same thing is when you go over here to Job, I'm gonna tell you, we think we're gonna get around for some reason. And he told us over here in Job chapter 9 and verse 20, he tell us, it says right here, it says, if providing. So this is a condition. Soon as you do this, soon as we say, I don't ask questions because I fear. So, okay, soon as you do that, this apply. Providing I justify myself, my own mouth shall condemn me. So as soon as we come with that excuse and give our own reason, we already start fulfilling this. And again, fear is not of God. We seen that. God didn't give us the spirit of fear. So we doing something clearly according to the flesh, which we actually supposed to be condemning by breaking the vessel, the earthen vessel. See, all I'm doing is just speaking scriptures that we've already seen, but now I'm giving us a full summary of it. But then we choose to keep it. Instead of breaking the vessel, we choose to keep things and hold on to stuff. So what happens is when we choose not to ask questions because we saying it's out of fear, we gonna say, because if I ask the question, then I might get shot down. And if I say something, I might get a harsh response. I might get checked. So our issue is we choose to keep our mouths shut because we don't like what comes with the correction, because now we find it grievous. We find it cruel. We find it painful. We find it harsh. It ain't the vessel that we got the issue. We don't like the rebuke. We don't like the reprimand. We don't like the chastisement because it's grievous. It's painful. So I don't like the way he responded to me. He should respond differently. He should be softer with his response. Really? I didn't know you was the teacher. Because now we putting our own standard there. Guess what? That's your pride. Because when Jehovah, he ain't say, well, when you give correction, you got to be soft about it. No, correction, they ain't coming soft. That thought process got to get broken. You can't sit there and tap it. You got to break it so we can be built up in the right way. But we take offense to it and we say, no, See, y'all ever heard somebody say, you hear this all the time. You ever heard somebody say, when you approach me, you got to come correct. Y'all ever heard that? Somebody said, when you approach me, you got to come correct. See, you'll hear a lot of women will say this. And some men say it too, but you hear a lot of women say it, but some men will say it too. But guess what? That same mindset saying, when you approach me, you got to come correct. Guess what? We done exalted ourselves, putting ourselves on a certain level. But guess what? We come with that same mindset when receiving truth. Guess what? That ain't no different from you telling God he need to come correct. But then we sit there and think we ain't doing nothing. This is what I'm saying. Because we got a problem with the correct because we don't like the way it comes out. So we ain't going to receive it. We'll harden our hearts. So what I'm going to do, what I'm going to say, well, I'm just not going to ask no questions. I'm going to keep my mouth shut. See, now if I do that, I can protect myself. See, now the fear becomes the defense mechanism, because I know if I say something, if I open my mouth, he might respond in this way that I don't like. He might expose me. So if I keep my mouth shut and sit in the background, I can avoid that possible embarrassment. And guess what that does? Pride does that. Pride keeps our mouth shut. So the fear of exposure keeps us far from God because we ain't willing to humble ourselves and be broken. You know why? Because now we don't reason in our own mind. We don't set our own standard. We don't set our own self on high in what we thinking is right because we done justified ourselves in our own eyes. Don't play the game. He tells over here in Proverbs chapter 16, verse 2. He tell you right here, Proverbs 16, verse 2, it says, all the ways of a man, a male or female, are clean in his own eyes, in his own understandings, but the Spirit of God weigheth the spirits. So we see Jehovah gonna weigh the spirits. So he gonna see what weight we operating with. We either operating with that just weight or those diverse ones. See, we went through that the last couple of weeks. But the point is, see, a man, a male or female ways, they clean in his own understanding. I'm clean in my own eyes. That's what we gonna think. That's what we're going to think. So we'll come up with these thoughts and these inventions, these plots and these schemes, thinking we getting around something. So we'll try to avoid embarrassment so much that we're willing to risk our salvation to do it and not draw closer to where Jehovah is. We won't draw closer to God. This ain't no different from what you actually see here when we go over here to Exodus. That's why you even see this here. When we go over here, Exodus chapter 20, we're going to start right here. In Exodus chapter 20 and verse 19, that's why it says, and they said unto Moses, watch, this is what we do. Speak thou with us. You speak with us, Mo. You speak to us and tell us what you got to say. And we will hear. But let not God speak with us, lest we die. No, we don't want God to speak. No, you speak to us, Moses. See, we can see the people rather hear a man's voice rather than the voice of God. See, man, when you listen to, man, flesh gonna tell you smooth things. Flesh gonna charm you. To please our flesh. See, we rather hear flesh. See, man gonna flatter you. He gonna charm you. He can manipulate you with his words and his understanding. Give you something easy to take. Give you something easy to swallow. See, we don't want to hear God. Meaning, we don't want to hear sound doctrine from Jehovah. See, that's why you see all this thunderings and lightnings and the trumpet and mountain smoke. You see all that going on? See, when they heard that trumpet, that loud noise and all this, see, this represents all those warnings and those judgments and statutes that was coming from God that was going out to the people. See, we didn't want to hear that. Nah, Lord. Nah, Moses, you got to do something different, bro. Nah, you got to tell us something. You can't do but you got to tell us something different, bro. See, we don't want to hear that. But guess what? Those warnings and those judgments and those statutes coming from Jehovah spoken against us, that was exposing us for our sin. That's where the fear came in. That's why you're going to see, this is why the fear was there. The people was in fear, not because of the person or just because. The fear was because of the exposure. They was being exposed for their issues because the law exposes sin. Yeah. Matter of fact, let me show you something. I'm going to prove the point. On what I just said. Man, let's go over here to Romans because Paul, he spoke law. So he going to tell you. Let me go here to Romans chapter 7. We're going to go to Romans chapter 7, verse 7. He going to tell us something. Romans chapter 7, verse 7. He says, what shall we say then? Is the law sin? God forbid. Nay, no. I had not known sin but by the law. Exactly the point. For I had not known less except the law had said, thou shalt not covet. That's the point. Because these were those statutes that was exposing our sins for what we were doing. But that's why he tell you that the law was, matter of fact, let's go over here to 1 Timothy. We're going to see it. He tell us right here in 1 Timothy chapter 1. He tell us in 1 Timothy chapter 1, 1 Timothy chapter 1, we're going to start at verse 9. We're going to start at verse 9 and he's going to take it to verse 10. 1 Timothy chapter 1, starting at verse 9, we're going to take it to verse 10. It says, knowing this, that the law was not made for a righteous man. It's not made for a righteous man, but for the lawless and disobedient. Exactly the point. For the ungodly and for sinners, for unholy and profane, for murderers of fathers and murderers of mothers, for manslayers, for whoremongers, for them that defile themselves with mankind, for men stealers, for liars, for perjured persons, and if there be any other thing that is contrary to sound doctrine. Exactly the point. That's why he was doing this, because the law exposes this wickedness. The law exposes these sins, these iniquities, because it wasn't made for a righteous man, but for the unrighteous. Who? Us. Those of us who want to stay in sin. But again, these statutes, these judgments exposes us for who we are. That's why he tell you back over here in Romans chapter 7 and verse 8. In verse 8, and we're going to hit verse 8 and verse 9 just to finish it out so we can get the full point. He tells us, it says, but sin, taking occasion by commandment, wrought in me all manner of concupiscence. For without the law, sin was dead. Yeah, it was like it won't there. But watch this. For I was alive without the law once. Watch this. But, however, when the commandment came, so when the commandment, those instructions, those statutes, those judgments, when those came, watch this. Sin revived. Now you know it. Now I died. That's exactly the point. That's the point I want us to see. See, people, we don't like this. The flesh don't want to be exposed for what it is. But this is what was going on over here. See, JEHOVAH was showing us what our issues were. He brought us law, but we didn't want to hear it. So when we get back over here to Exodus, that's why you see it. You see it. That's why you see all this here. That's why he telling us everything what our issue is. That's why you see, thou shalt have no other gods. Thou shalt not bow down to yourself. Thou shalt not take the Lord God. That's why you see all this here. Because it was written for an unrighteous man, showing us we doing all this crap that we shouldn't been doing, and now we getting exposed for it, and now we fear it. That's why you see back over here in Exodus chapter 20 and verse 20, now you see the reaction. And Moses said unto the people, fear not, don't fear. What you afraid of? What you fearful for? It said, for God has come to prove you that his fear. So you see how it switches. Now it switches to the desire, that his desire may be in the presence of your faces, that you sin not. So that's the point. So he's exposing it for us to break it, to get rid of it, not for us to sit there and have fear of the exposure of it and try to hide it. That's the point. It has to be exposed so we can recognize it, so we can acknowledge what it is and remove it. But we sit there and look at the exposure as terror. We look at it as horror, like, oh no, please. What's our problem? Because he even tell you right here in verse 21, watch what we did. Watch what we did. It said, and the people stood afar off. Exactly the point. Because we so dang caught up in our flesh and our pride that we would withdraw ourselves from it. That's why we stood afar off. And Moses drew near unto the thick darkness where God was. See, many of us, we're not actually willing to go through this. We say we will, but we not actually go through it. By going through this thick darkness, See, that's where we being proved. See, we face many trials and adversities to draw closer unto JEHOVAH, but you can't come with baggage. You can't come trying to hide and conceal your issues, because the trials, the adversities is for refinement. That's why I say we in this proving ground. Because we always being tried and proven whether we're going to follow his law or no. But again, so the question is, how can one be refined if they are not willing to be broken? How can JEHOVAH examine us if we standing afar off? He already know that we wicked, but how he going to examine it? And we sitting there, we going to stand afar off and we going to keep ourselves separated. So the trial of man is in his own reasoning. But instead of actually it refining you, it would only consume you, because the pride within us will keep us in fear. That's what we have to understand. The pride will keep us a stand afar off, because we're not going to see the exposure as an opportunity for refinement and growth. We're not going to see it that way. We don't see it as an opportunity for correction and instruction in righteousness because of fear to draw closer. We see that exposure as torment instead. We see it as dread. We see it as terror and horror. So we choose to avoid it because we don't want to face it. That's why we stand back. That's why we keep our mouths closed. Because we allow pride to keep us in fear of being exposed for what our issues actually are. So we stand afar off and withdraw ourselves to keep ourselves separated. That's why we isolate ourselves. That's what I'm saying. This is the issue. But then you can even see it another way. See, people, what we do is, what we have to understand, people will even limit how they deal with you. People will even limit talking to you just based on knowledge alone. They stand afar off from you because of that alone. I want to show us something. I want to show you even how they even did Moses. So I want to show us over here, because I'm going to keep proving the point. I'm going to show you over here in Exodus chapter 34. I'm going to keep proving the point. In Exodus chapter 34, and we're going to hit verse 29. We're going to hit verse 29 and verse 30. He tell us something. Exodus chapter 34, starting at verse 29, it said, and it came to pass when Moses came down from Mount Sinai with the 2 tables of testimony in Moses' hand. When he came down from the mount, Moses wist not that the skin of his face shone while he talked with him. And when Aaron and all the children of Israel saw Moses, behold, remember, the skin of his face shone, and they were afraid to come nigh to him. So we can see when Moses came down from the mount, he's shining. So all the people was afraid to come nigh to him. They didn't want to get close unto him. They afraid. Why? That man looked like a dang light bulb. When light come, darkness got to flee. See, understand this. See, this was not just because of the man. It wasn't just because of merely Moses himself. No, it was because of his countenance, his presence, the wisdom, the knowledge that he possessed. He was shining like a light. So they seen the wisdom that was on this man. So again, their pride kept them from drawing closer. So they was afraid. It's telling you right here. They was afraid to come down. They afraid to approach him. They was in fear, not because of the man himself, but because of the knowledge that he possessed. So even based on wisdom alone, people would choose to stand afar from you. People will fear to draw close unto you because of the knowledge. It's actually crazy. It's weird, but we do it. We do it. He tells us in Ecclesiastes chapter 8 and verse 1, because he even tell you something. It says, who is a wise man, and who knoweth the interpretation of a thing? A man's wisdom maketh his face to shine. Exactly the point. And the boldness of his face shall be changed. So the face is the countenance, the appearance, the visage, his presence. So a man's wisdom maketh his face to shine because he's enlightened. He's full of wisdom. He's full of the spirit. So you see, even in you'll see it. You'll see it even in his appearance, in his countenance, in his presence, because you can see it. The same thing even on how they even seen Solomon. I want to show us something over here in 1 Kings, or even how they even seen Solomon based on wisdom alone. I want to show us over here in 1 Kings chapter 3 and 1 Kings chapter 3 and verse 28. I want to show us something. 1 Kings chapter 3 verse 28. It says, and all Israel heard the judgment. So they heard the doctrines and teaching which the king, this is Solomon, had judged, which he taught, and they feared the king. Exactly the point. Watch this. For the reason. Now you see they feared it. Now watch the reason. This is the reason. They saw that the wisdom of God was in him to do judgment, to do doctrines and teaching. They seen it. That's why they feared him. Not because of him, but they knew he was truly a man of God. Because of the wisdom that he possessed, they saw the judgment. They saw the doctrines and teachings that he brought to the people. They saw his wisdom. So you will have people who will even fear that and choose to stand afar off. So they'll watch. So they'll sit there and they'll watch how they approach you. The same with Moses. They was afraid to come nigh to him because of his countenance. He was shining. His presence, the knowledge he possessed made him afraid to draw close because the presence of JEHOVAH was upon him. You can see it. People might say, well, it don't say that. How you say, please, let me go over here. Let's go over here to Numbers chapter 6. We're going to prove the point even more. Because he even tell you in Numbers chapter 6 and verse 24, and we're going to take it down to verse 26. He even tell you, Numbers chapter 4, starting at verse 24, it says, the Lord, the Spirit of God, bless thee, meaning he give thee wisdom. So he give wisdom to thee and keep thee, meaning preserve thee, to uphold thee. Watch this. The Spirit of God maketh his face, his wisdom, his presence shine upon thee, just like he did Moses, and be gracious unto thee. The Spirit of God lifted up his countenance upon thee and give thee peace. Exactly the point. So this is the point. The presence of JEHOVAH's Spirit was upon him. That's why he was shining. So the thing is, he don't need to put on a false image to hide or maintain anything because he's in the image of God. JEHOVAH is the one who's upholding him and preserving this man. That's why you're going to see it in him. But we'll sit there and stand afar from it, and we'll be afraid of that. Same as we do today. Same as we do today. Guess what? I'm going to give us the perfect example. Even when we go to the feast days, perfect example. We sit there and we attend the feast days, and a lot of us sit there and choose to stand afar off from JEHOVAH's prophet, from the pastor that we have here in this congregation. But guess what? Not because of fear of the man alone, but because of the fear of the knowledge that he possessed. You see him. So we'll stand afar off because we don't want ourselves to be exposed for what we don't know. When he already sees us. Like I said, he already knows what we about because he see our sin. He see it. But we think we fooling somebody. We'll go right to the feast days and be sitting there and be standoffish. Matter of fact, I guarantee you in a couple of weeks at the Passover, you going to see it. We'll sit right there. We'll sit there and do a little hey and bye and then try to avoid them and move out in all different sorts of weird ways. You can't tell me we don't do it. See, our issue is we too busy trying to avoid being exposed to something instead of just being who we are. When according to scripture, he even tell us something when we even in the presence of one such as that. He even tell us exactly in Sirach chapter 6, he tells us in Sirach chapter 6 and verse 36, he tells us, it says, and if, providing thou seest a man of understanding, get thee betimes, get thee quickly unto him, and let thy desire wear the steps of his door. But guess what? We're going to say, we finna turn the other way and do our own desire. Okay. You see what he's saying? He said, if you see a man of understanding, get thee betimes. So get thee quickly unto him. But we sitting there trying to avoid him. Ain't it crazy? But it's not about the man, but you know the knowledge that he possesses something that you need for your understanding, for your salvation. But we trying to do other things. But this is what we do. See, we'll sit there, we'll watch, we'll observe, but we keep our distance. This is what we do. Again. So to bring us closer again, I'm not just saying this just to point people out, if that's what you're thinking. I'm not saying to point, I'm actually saying this from experience, because I've done this. That's why I'm speaking on it. I ain't going to speak on something that I ain't already did. That's the thing. See, I have kept my distance from Jehovah's prophet, not because of fear of him as a man, but what I knew was this man meant business. I could see that the spirit is upon this man, but it caused me to fear. And I'm going to tell you why, and I'm going to tell you what I did. Because I already knew that I was inferior in knowledge. So guess what? Instead of seeking and drawing closer to see what I could learn, I decided to move in pride in order to protect my image that I built. See, my pride kept me distant. My pride kept my mouth shut because I didn't want to be exposed that I was inferior. But this is what I'm talking about. So I wasn't actually willing to gain the understanding that I needed. All behind pride leading to fear of being exposed that I was inferior in knowledge. See, I would talk to other people who I felt like was on the same level or below me. See, that's the pride, because now I'm exalted. But him, nah, I ain't gonna say anything. And guess what? That's shady. 100% shady. I was doing it. See, that's the pride that do that to you. See, that's why I say, I ain't got to sit here and sugarcoat this. I can speak this freely. I can speak on this freely because I know what I've done. See, I know the things I know what it looked like. But I'm only sharing all of this to continue to prove the point. Because a lot of us, we don't think that's us. We too busy trying to hide. We don't think we do. We don't think it's us. So we choose to continue to do things and act like we don't do it. But again, if we truly after God, if we truly got a heart after God, if that's true, then we would be doing something. Such as he told us. Such as he tell us over here in Sirach. Such as he told us over here in Sirach chapter 39. In Sirach chapter 39, verse 1. Down to verse 3. Sirach chapter 39, verse 1 down to verse 3. It says, but he that giveth his mind to the law of the Most High, and is occupied in the meditation thereof, will seek out the wisdom of all the ancient, and be occupied in prophecies. Yeah. He will keep the sayings of the renowned men, and where subtle parables are, he will be there also. He will seek out the secrets of grave sentences, and be conversant in dark parables. But guess what? As soon as these parables, these dark sayings and these dark speeches be coming out, we ain't trying to be part of the conversation. Now we ain't trying to sit at the table. Soon as that elder start breaking down these parables and dark saying, now we got to skew. Now we got to find something else to do. Now we turn around and go in the other direction. Because soon as he asks us, do we understand? Now nobody ain't got nothing to say. Because I'm going to sit there, well, I'm just going to stay quiet because I don't need him to possibly ask me a question and I get exposed for my lack of knowledge. Nope, not going to happen. So let me avoid that and go somewhere else. I'm telling you, we is a crack up. We do this, but fail to realize what we actually doing. See, if Jehovah has a messenger, a true prophet, a mouthpiece, and if you are in fear of him, that's not because you just fear him for him. Get that out of your head. Don't deceive yourself. You not just, but you fear, but your fear is being exposed by him. You fear being exposed by the knowledge that he's giving you. You fear the correction. We fear the rebuke. We fear the chastenment from the word that's being spoken. So we choose to avoid it. So we won't receive it because you know it's going to expose your lack of knowledge. So we said, nah, I ain't finna get embarrassed in front of these people. Why? Because we have a reputation to maintain. Again, pride. We elevate it. We can't stand the fact of being brought low and being told that we wrong. Prideful man, one-on-one. So if you fear him, you choosing to turn away from receiving the knowledge of God. Because if we fear, that's because of our pride of being exposed of our lack of knowledge. See, that's the rejection right there. That's the heart that has chosen to turn away when you choose to stand afar off because you choosing not to receive knowledge, the same knowledge that can actually save your life. But we choose to stand afar off from it. When he even tell us right here, we go over here to Hosea, he tell us everything that we do. Hosea chapter 4 and verse 6. He said, Hosea chapter 4 verse 6, it says, my people, sons, are destroyed for a lack of knowledge. Because, again, that word, because, he telling you the reason why thou has rejected knowledge. He said, okay, I will also reject thee, that thou should be no priest to me. Seeing that thou hast forgotten the law of thy God, I will also forget thy children, thy works. So again, pride goeth before destruction. So we should understand this a lot better now. So being destroyed for a lack of knowledge is because of the pride of not humbling ourselves to receive it. Okay, we don't really receive it. We reject it. Guess what? He gonna reject us. Simple as that. Because if you say, well, you know what? I'm gonna keep my distance and I ain't gonna say nothing. Okay. He ain't gonna change what he doing. It is as simple as that. Because we want to sit there and say, well, I don't want to look like I don't know something. Then guess what? You're really not going to know because we choosing to stay in the dark. So we have to understand something because I want to put these two here and make this clear to us. Because I want us to understand something. When you look at Sirach chapter 4, you look at Sirach chapter 4 and verse 20. It tells you something. It says, observe the opportunity and beware of evil. Yeah. And be not ashamed when it concerneth thy soul. Why? And I'm going to show you this one I want to tie with it to prove the point. Because something that we need to be doing. He tell you. It's 2 Peter chapter 1 and verse 10. It says, wherefore the rather. So do this. Brethren, give diligence to make your calling and election sure. For providing you do these things, you should never fail. So we got to make our calling and our election sure. So we have to be diligent in that. We have to be steadfast in that. So that means everything that we need to know, you got a mouthpiece of Jehovah right here amongst us who can take you as deep as you want to go. But we'll stand afar off from. Why? We got to make our calling and election sure. So how are we going to stand afar off and not ask the things that we need to know that concerneth our soul for our own salvation? What exactly are we even trying to do here? How are you going to make your calling and election sure if pride, the fear of exposure, is in the way? I got another example for us. See, I got a so let's look at this. You can have a man, right, who will appear knowledgeable in front of others, such as a man that has a reputation amongst people who will speak knowledge and speak Bible. He might even speak with a lot of women. Not to say that women don't have knowledge of scripture, because there's plenty of women here who's strong in understanding. But the reason I'm saying that, because you can have a man, because what men do, men like to speak knowledge with women a lot of times because he feels superior, or with those that he feels he has more knowledge than. But then as soon as Jehovah's messenger pops up and comes around, or someone that he knows that he's actually inferior to in knowledge, now his conversation changes. Now he backs down. When someone who's actually has greater understanding appears, see, he might change the conversation or even walk away from the conversation, or he'll cut off the conversation. So he'll do that in order to make sure that his reputation stays intact. Not because he just fears the man, but he fears getting exposed for the lack of knowledge that he has and how inferior he actually is to the one who has more knowledge than him. People do this all the time. So he stops talking. He stops engaging because he know he might get checked on something that he don't actually know. So in order to avoid that, he stops the conversation. The fear of exposure. Now that's his defense mechanism to protect his image. See, that ain't nothing but a defense mechanism. See, this ain't no different from you got a dog that sits there and barks and growls and likes to intimidate other little dogs that try to intimidate them. They're trying to intimidate other dogs that's smaller than him until a bigger dog comes around that shows him that he's nothing. So that same dog that was doing all that barking, now when that bigger dog comes around, now he's going to bow down his head. And you know how they like that. They're going to go whimpering. See, this is no different from the man who appears strong in the presence of those who are inferior to him, but in the presence of someone who he knows he's actually inferior to, he humbles himself and go crouching because he know he ain't finna risk getting checked and being exposed for his own weakness. But that's how it works because one, he's already elevated himself with people because he has a reputation he has to maintain, but he fears getting exposed openly in front of others for what he doesn't know by one who possesses more knowledge than him. Matter of fact, I want to show us an example. I want to show us an example real quick because you can even see one who was even in this position. Oh, look at this. Let's show us something. And we're going to go over here to John chapter 3. We're going to go to John chapter 3. We're going to hit verse 1 and verse 2 because I want to show us something. Let's look at this. In John chapter 3, verse 1, watch this. It says, there was a man of the Pharisees, these Pharisees, named Nicodemus, a ruler of the Jews. So just from that alone, so a couple things we know. So we know this Nicodemus, he's a Pharisee. So he follows the laws of his fathers. They do everything according to the flesh. But he's a ruler of the Jews. Now Nicodemus, his name, his way is the conqueror of the people. That's what his name is. So this lets you know that he got a reputation. That let you know he clearly holding weight with these people that he ruling over. So again, the point is that we making, he's a ruler. He's a master. He's a teacher in Israel. But guess what? Watch how he come to Yahushua. The same came to Jesus by night and said unto him, Rabbi, Master, Teacher, you serious? We know that thou in your profession of beauty, a teacher come from God. Wait a minute, nigga. I thought nigga, he supposed to be this big bad nigga, the conqueror, and he sitting here coming to Yahweh, Jesus. We master, we know you a teacher come from God. For no man can do these miracles that thou doest except God be with him. Now, mind you, Yahweh taught openly. He ain't do it in secret. He ain't sit there. He ain't teach at night. Matter of fact, he tell you it's 12 hours in a day. He got to work when it's day. And he can't work in the night. He tell you at night come when no man can work. But this dude, he want to come at night. He want to come in secret. He want to come in his wickedness. But let me even show that because I even want to show you how I even tell you that he taught openly. See, this is going to prove the point even more on what I'm even doing. In John chapter 18, verse 20, you see, and Yahweh answer him, I spake openly to the world. I ever taught in the synagogue and in the temple, whither the Jews always resort. Yeah, somewhere probably where he was. And in secret, I have said nothing. Exactly the point. He taught openly. But we can see Nicodemus, he want to come at night. So he coming to him in secret instead of coming openly. So the question is, if he wanted understanding, then why didn't he come to Yahweh openly when he taught? He taught in their synagogues. He taught in their temple, wherever the Jews was. He taught in their marketplaces and their villages. He taught in front of everybody openly. So why didn't Nicodemus come to him then? He's a ruler of the people, right? He's the conqueror of the people. He the ruler of the Jews. Why he didn't come openly? Why he coming like this? But he decides to come in private and in secret. Get the point? Do we get the point? He got a reputation. He got a reputation to protect. He got a reputation he got to keep intact. Remember, this man, he's a ruler of the people. So Yahushua, he started running this parable on them. Nicodemus, he confused and he don't know what's going on. But you see how he broke them off, because we get down here to verse 8. We're going to take it to 10. Watch what he said. It said, the wind bloweth where it listeneth, and thou hearest the sound thereof, but canst not tell whence it cometh, and whither it goeth. So is everyone that is born brought forth of the Spirit. Watch this. Nicodemus answered and said unto him, how can these things be? Yahushua answered and said, in your profession of beauty, art thou a master of Israel? Ain't you a teacher of Israel? Ain't you a teacher of the people? And knowest not these things? See, this is exactly the point that I'm making. So you see the same thing here. You see how Yahushua, and I guarantee you, if he would have came and said that openly, he would have said the same exact thing. But you have people who desire to keep themselves elevated because they have a certain reputation to maintain. Just as Nicodemus, he's a teacher in Israel. He's a ruler of the Jews. So you really think he was going to approach Yahushua openly and risk getting broken off like that in front of all the people? That's why he came at night. He ain't finna. Why you think he came in secret? That's the point. See, just as today, when you have people, when you trying to protect a reputation and you trying to protect your status, see, you'll speak things with others and you might even hold weight with them. You might even have more knowledge than them. But some people, when it comes to those who they know is more superior than them in knowledge, they watch how they move. They fear that. They fear that. So they'll withdraw. So they won't question them. They ain't going to question them openly because of their pride in order to protect their status. They're going to fear being exposed based on knowledge, their lack of it. So they're not going to want to be exposed for not knowing what they don't know. So they're going to come at night. They're going to come in secret, just like Nicodemus. See, this is why you have people who won't even deal with you openly, but then they want to come to you in secret and want to ask things. But they won't deal openly. They won't ask anything openly. They don't even talk to you. But then in open, they keep their distance. But then they want to come at night. They want to come in secret when nobody around. This is what we're talking about. So we should be able to see all of this clearly. And the thing is, see, none of this would even be an issue for us, provided we actually did what we supposed to do. We actually do what we supposed to do, which is the study to actually show ourselves approved, not unto men, but unto God. That's why he even tells us over here in 2 Timothy chapter 2. 2 Timothy chapter 2 and verse 15. He said what? Study to show thyself approved unto God. A workman that needeth not to be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth. So if we study, if we put in the work, then we have no need to be ashamed. What you going to be ashamed for? What you going to be ashamed when you know you put in the work? If you can prove what you saying according to scripture and you can prove what you saying to be true, he tell you to prove all things. Then what you going to be ashamed for if you can prove what you're talking about? Because even then, you can gain more understanding to even take you deeper in scriptures. When we ask the questions and gain understanding, now we can build on that understanding that we given to even take us deeper. So we can ask questions. We can ask genuine questions for clarity, not out of fear of being exposed for something that we don't know. So we have to understand this pride, this fear. It's not separate. So hopefully we understand this. Yeah. Cause hopefully we got a clear understanding in this. Cause that pride, having that reputation, that status, that notoriety, that standard that we set for ourselves is always going to put us in a position where we're going to fear exposure. We're going to fear being exposed for our sin, for our shame, for our humiliation of who we really are. That's why that actually happens. So remember, like I said, we can't sit there and we want to say, I gotta get rid of this fear. I got this fear problem. I got to get rid of this fear, this anxiety. Remember, that vessel got to get broken. We have to break these vessels. So the pride has to get broken. If the pride don't get broken, promise you, that fear ain't going nowhere. So that's what we got to keep in mind. This is what we have to keep in mind, and this is what we have to understand. So hopefully with this teaching, we got clear understanding in this lesson, and now we can effectively move forward as we continue to move forward on this journey. So With that, I like to appreciate everybody. I would like to appreciate everybody for coming out and tuning in to this lesson. Hopefully, we was richly edified and we received understanding. So with that, this was Evangelist James with the King James Bible University, and I would like to say, Shalom.